Hi there, I'm Loretta Garbutt.
And I'm Heather Camlot.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Loretta.
I just want to thank everyone for joining us for our Mabel's Fables chat for I Read Canadian. I Read Canadian is a national day of celebration, and it's great that many of us are getting together to promote Canadian books for young people. The big day is February 17th, when we all will read Canadian for 15 minutes. I'll probably read for the entire day, but 15 minutes is a good start.
Perfect. So we were just going to introduce ourselves a little more, show you our books. So I am the author of, as I break my computer, What If Soldiers Fought with Pillows, which is a nonfiction book, 15 profiles of people who used imaginative ways to make a difference in the world. I also write fiction. I have 2 novels, The Other Side, that just came out this year, as well as Clutch, which came out in 2017.
Yeah, that was your first book, and that was such a big deal.
Thanks,
you were
Loretta.
the first one to be published, the first employee from Mabel's Fables to be published. We were both employees, past employees of Mabel's Fables. This is my first picture book called A Stopwatch from Grandpa.
Awesome.
Thank you. It's a story about a relationship between a grandfather and a young child, and they love timing each other, playing little silly games, running down the street or eating ice cream. And then when the grandfather passes away, the child is left with a stopwatch. But it's a fun book, and it's a book of hope. And it's a really good book to open a discussion with. Carmen Mock is the illustrator, and she just gave this whole book a whole other level of warmth to it. She created a gender-neutral child, so it would appeal to all children. And she used like 4 or 5 colors that showed the limited emotional range of the child. But as I said, it's a good way to open a difficult topic with a child. And it also came out in the UK. It was Grandpa's Stopwatch. So that's my one book.
It's amazing what an oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say I have another one in 2022, but I haven't caught
Awesome.
up yet, Heather.
I was just going to say that's amazing what an illustrator can do. With What If Soldiers Fought with Pillows, also Serge Bloch from France did the pictures. And again, it's also just a few colors, but it makes such an incredible, it takes books to another level. I'm so glad to have done something.
An impact in that, in your book there. Yes. And it's such an important book, and it's done so well. So congrats.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
All right. So we're going to stop congratulating each other, and we're going to mention how we met. So we met at Mabel's Fables.
Right.
Loretta was already working there. I was coming in for a job interview, and Loretta was actually the first person who was in the store, who welcomed me, took me on a tour of the store in her all happy way that she always is. Then I had my interview, and and then I started working.
Yeah. And I started working there. Well, I think I was there for almost 15 years.
Wow.
I started working when my kids got into high school, and they weren't coming home for lunch, and I just wanted to be around books. And I was also taking the classes upstairs through George Brown, the Writing for Children classes. And I mean, that place is a magical place, right? You and I were just immediately thrown into the busy world of Mabel's, and we wore many hats. We sold books. Yes. We ordered books. We received books. We
reviewed books. I managed a blog where everybody had to send me book reviews.
Yeah. And that was huge. I mean, I was reading books that I wouldn't normally read, and probably you were too.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing to read a book, but if you know how to sell a book and talk about a book, and I just grew in a huge manner by reading books I wouldn't normally pick up, and also being able to write about them and talk about them. So I understood why they worked then.
Yeah. And I think when you show how much in love you are with a book, it's hard for the person you're selling to not say like, okay, let's give that one a try.
Right. And it was so great because it was an important skill to have. I mean, most of the time we didn't realize what skills we were learning. We were just doing our jobs. Yeah. And then you're realizing, oh, I've got a reluctant reader on my hand. And, how do I sell a book to a reluctant reader? And it was, I like to say it was my university.
Yes.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
I
total
love that.
immersion. It
And
was,
I think that's the only way to say it, because you're learning all these things, not even realizing that, you know, maybe that we wanted to be writers at that point, or maybe we did, but it wasn't happening. We weren't writers, professional writers or anything at that point. And
no.
so you're just, it's just going into you and into you, and you're studying what you like and you're studying what you don't like. And
Yeah.
so it helps you learn how you're going to put pen to paper for your own work.
Yeah, I didn't even know how to look at being a writer or where to start. I just knew I wanted to be around books. And you're right, you're just absorbing and you're
Yeah.
talking. And remember when Eleanor or somebody would pick a book off the shelf, a new picture book would come in, like when this one came in. This was a huge book, The Patchwork Bike, about a kid who makes this bike out of just random pieces. And she was like, everybody gather around, gather around. And we would open up the book and we would read it and we would talk about it and discuss, isn't that great? It's cardboard. And that's kind of how we learned, and also how to share those exciting moments, because you're just so passionate about it.
Yeah. And I think also something that Eleanor brought to us, to me especially, was I worked some of the events with authors.
Yeah.
And so they would come into the store, or I would go out with them to visit schools. And I learned, I think, how important connecting a reader, even a reluctant reader, with an
Right.
author was so big. And part of the reason I say that is because I have a reluctant reader. I have one kid who loves to read. I have one kid who does not like to read. And so for me, Eleanor actually recommended books. And so I'm trying to find that pile. Here it is. I have so many books on my
I know
desk.
what you're gonna say.
For me, the first book she recommended for my son was Peter
Oh,
Nimble and His
yeah.
Fantastic Eyes by Jonathan Auxier.
I reviewed that for the store and I was blown away by that.
It was fantastic. And I had the ARC and he loved it. He loved it, loved it, loved it. So much so that I said, you know, Jonathan Auxier is going to be doing an event with Mabel's. Why don't you write him a letter? And he did. My son actually wrote a letter to Jonathan Auxier. And then
Wow.
Jonathan Auxier came into the store. He wasn't supposed to. And I had a freak out. And everybody thought I was like madly in love with Jonathan Auxier, but I wasn't. I was just so excited that he got my kid excited about his
Right.
story. And I have the letter. He actually, Jonathan Auxier actually
Oh my
wrote back.
gosh, so accessible, right? It made
Yeah,
it so real
which
for your son.
was so huge. I'm going to cover my son's name because he's going to be embarrassed, but I'll just show you quickly. He wrote 2 pages of a
Oh my
letter back
gosh.
to my son.
Yeah.
That was the first time he connected with an author, the smile when I brought that back.
Yeah.
And the second book, after he liked that, Eleanor again was like, well, let him try The Vindico by Wesley King.
Yeah.
This book, oh, this changed everything. This was the book where we were reading at night, and he would say, just read another chapter, please. And so
Yeah.
I would.
One
And
more,
then
one more.
And then one day he came downstairs and he said, we need to read another chapter. And I said, I can't, I'm busy right now. And my son sat down on the sofa and read by himself. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And
You saw it
again,
firsthand, how a book can change somebody completely, turn him into a reader.
turned him into a reader.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, all he would read afterwards was Wesley King, but that was okay. Eleanor brought Wesley King to his school. Amazing. They got to meet, they became buddies.
Yeah.
They have this running joke about their favorite soccer teams who are enemies. It was lovely. It was
Yeah.
lovely. And so
Yeah, that's
from
a pretty
there,
big
he was
deal.
reading.
No,
all
those
the time.
events were huge. I mean, meeting all those authors, and just what impressed me so much is to watch an author engage an entire gym full of
Yes.
kids and have them sitting at the edge of their seats, and, you know, illustrator or author, you know, there was Kenneth Opel, Kevin Sylvester, you know, Barbara Reed. I remember going to a really early event with Barbara Reed. It was like, oh my gosh, oh wow, that's
This is how
so
you see my light in
great.
it. This
Yeah,
was my
that-
daughter. My daughter made this after she came with me to a Barbara Reed event that we were working.
Yeah.
She wouldn't do any of the arts and crafts that Barbara Reed had set out, but when we got home, she took out her plasticine and she created
Yeah.
this. And
There's
I was
such a magic there when a child
amazed.
can connect like that. And that's what inspired me to go, okay, you know, how do I want to write? And I knew I wanted to write at that point. But I was also the storytime lady at Mabel's. And other than the events, reading every single picture book in that store during story time gave me a really good idea of, what I wanted to be writing, what kind of fun stuff and easy stuff I wanted to put in kids' hands. Anything by Debbie or Ruth Ohe was just sweet. And, I just knew that simplicity of writing and the magic of it is where I wanted to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we said, people were coming into the store all the time, and they would go upstairs and they would sign the wall.
Yes.
And I remember you and I were both like, we just want to sign the wall. We just want to sign the wall.
Would anybody notice if I just stuck my name in, even though I'm not an author?
Yeah, it was amazing just watching people. I remember Alan Stratton came in to sign the wall, and that was just
Meg Rossoff, and those, some really big authors from the UK and US. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, everybody did. So we had all these authors coming in. What are some of your favorite Canadian books? Not necessarily who came into the store, but
right. Yeah. Ted Stoughton, when my kids were little, they loved the Glass Grinder Twin book. I think it was Mud Puddle, or I don't know, but when Ted Stoughton came into the door, I went, here's an author. So I loved his books. And this was one that made a big impression on me. And it was right in the 12s. You know how you can just see the shelving at the store and you know exactly where the books are?
Yep.
This was like imaginary, discovery. It was just magical to me and very childlike, the Kingfisher Days. I loved that. This book to me really inspired me because it was a quiet book. And yes, I love all the fun and goofy books and the books with energy, but having a quiet book and something that, it's a Japanese illustrator, but Kids Can Press published it here. So, and the illustrations, just the moments that you share with a child, made this book really special to me. When this book came into the store, part of our training was you just don't sell this. You can't really sell it to anybody because it's a very moving book. It's a really tough subject of loss, and it's an important book. So you have to know how to talk about it and how to get it into the right hands. And that was mainly our job, is getting the right book into right hands. So this little list of books here made me think I want to do that. And also I knew it was picture books because it compartmentalized an idea. And for me, that was the most powerful.
For me, it's very similar. For me, it was middle grade. I was drawn to the 12s, and I always wanted to be in the 12s. I think I read so many of those books, and similar. My section, my choices are not necessarily from the 12s. They're all from that age group. And some of the books that I found amazing that really made me want to write was Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis.
Yeah, great author.
I remember getting this and sitting down in the living room and finishing it in one sitting. I didn't get up. I finished the whole thing. It was that captivating a book. And the mixture of history and humor and sadness and determination. It was everything. It was everything.
The Tiffin by Mehtab Narsiman. That one was a day read for me too.
It's amazing. It's amazing how a book can pull you and just, you have so many other things going on in the world, and yet you just can't move.
You just let it go.
Yeah.
You just let the world go.
Another great one that I love and aspired to is The Dogs by Alan Stratton. A psychological thriller like no other. I could not put it down. I would read late into the night. I just wanted to know what was happening because you have no idea what's happening, who's real, who's not real. It was amazing.
Did you find when you read a book that you loved like that you would try to take it apart and figure out how he did it? Like how he wrote it and how he, put it together?
Not for that one, because I think I was just so overwhelmed by it in a good way. It was so powerful. But similarly to that, I think O.C. Daniel, and I'm going to mention Wesley King again, because like I said, we have so many of his books at home because of my reluctant reader. O.C. Daniel, I actually do think when I started writing The Other Side, this came to mind because it has so many different strands of a story that don't necessarily go together. You have this mystery of a father who's his death, and then you have this the mental illness section to it, and then you have this kid who wants to become a writer. There's so many different things that don't really go together, and I think that I did that for the other side. I brought a whole bunch of things that normally wouldn't go together.
Yeah. Took that idea and, grew from there.
Yeah, and put it together.
Yeah.
Exactly. What about some, you mentioned Missing to Mama in terms of picture books. I just want to point out a few nonfiction books because I do write nonfiction
That's right.
as
Yeah.
well. I love things with strange titles. So A Beginner's Guide to Mortality.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that one.
Oh yeah, it's there
Nice.
you go. It's Owl Kids.
Yeah.
This big light in my screen again, by Maria Birmingham. It mixes science and history together, and how people have tried to not die over the years,
neat.
over through history.
Yeah.
And similarly, I'll just point to Helene Becker's Monster Science.
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember taking that to book fairs. It was kind of always on the book fair list.
Yeah, and again, it's this crazy title, but it's so packed with science. It's amazing. It blows my mind that these kinds of books have come out.
Yeah,
I love it.
that's eye grabbing to a kid, right? Even on the shelf, you don't even have to sell that. That's just,
exactly.
just there. This was a great one when this came out. This rat book.
Yes, I have that too. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an F&G actually. It's not even stapled together. But it also features all the, past and present Indigenous people. So yeah, all those important books.
Perfect.
And what were the books that you loved to sell?
The books that I loved to sell were, and again, some of these names are going to come up over and over, so I apologize. One of them was Jonathan Oxier, The Night Gardener.
Yep.
I always told people that they had to read it covered in a blanket with a flashlight.
Such
to make
a
it even
creepy
scarier.
book. Oh my gosh, that was a creepy book.
That is how I sold it.
Yeah.
I loved Shooter by Carolyn Keene.
Wow. Yes, sorry, I interrupted you, but
go for it.
She wrote the book Greener Grass about the Irish famine. And that was one of the first books I read at Mabel's and that blew me away. Yeah.
Yeah. This one, it has a countdown. It's about a school in lockdown, and it has a countdown in it.
Right.
And it's just so simple, but that little countdown really freaks you out. I mean,
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
And then the last one, again, for the reluctant readers, which was really important to my son too, was Kevin Sylvester's Minors.
Yeah.
And when he had the first two books came out, my son was begging for the third one. I said, it's not out yet. It's not out yet. It's not out yet. Emailing Kevin Sylvester saying, can I have a manuscript version?
I was just going to say,
no.
Yeah.
So that also, again, my recommendations come, I always say that I read like a kid. I want to be gripped right away. And if I'm not, I actually will set the book aside.
Right. Yeah. But that was the good thing about reading and reviewing, because sometimes you had to read those books and then you would get into it. I'm a bit of a lazy reader, so that was a bit of a struggle for me. This is always a constant, remember when any of the John Klassen books come out, and the one, This Is Not My Hat, I think it was number 3 in this series. I remember I had such a great moment in a story time when I read the book and the big whale is coming out, and I said, so what just happened? Because a little tiny fish was inside, and a 5-year-old just perked up and he said, he did revenge. And I went, oh my gosh, it's so brilliant. And this one was an important one when that one came up. That was something fun that I always loved to. I mean, you could just walk in. I know even today I could walk in and pull like a dozen off the shelves, just that we want to read and we want to share them. And it's not just, it's that I really wanted to read them. Like I loved reading them. It wasn't just to sell them. It was just really to read the books because they were just fabulous books.
Yeah, it's amazing to have all these new books coming in. And we had a table in the basement with all the ARCs, so the advanced reader copies. Yeah. And then, the manager would put them in we all had little bookshelves or little, I don't know what you would call them.
Our little cubbies or whatever.
Cubbies, where we would all of a sudden find these arcs sitting there for us to read.
I miss that so
Usually
much.
usually by what we liked. They were kind of that way, but sometimes they weren't. And it was a real lesson. It was a real lesson in what you liked and sharing with the team.
Yeah.
So that everybody could understand, even beyond the blog and the reviews, was sharing between us so that everybody knew what everybody else loved.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then if you didn't have a book on the go, it was like, I need a book. You talk to the manager, go, I don't have any arcs. I need a book. Can you give me something to read? I mean, Eleanor was never short on handing you a book and saying, take these home. Take these home and read them.
Absolutely. What for you is the go-to for you, either a picture book or middle grade or YA? What was your go-to book that you wanted to put into everybody's hand?
Not necessarily Canadian, but Oliver Jeffers. And always, because I just loved heart and humor. Barbara Reed for sure. John Clausen. Gosh, I don't know. Those are a few. Gaio, in the baby section. Is it Gaio Fujikawa? In the baby section, the beautiful Japanese illustrations.
Oh, right. You were telling me about that one. Yeah.
Oh, and also Shane Peacock and Kit Pearson in the older grades. They were always a big sell for me. I remember a boy coming in and saying, or a girl coming in and saying, I have read every single Shane Peacock in the what was the series about Sherlock? Give me something like that. And when you finished a series, how bummed out you are that you've done that series and you need more. But those are my always go-to. What about you?
Yeah, well, my big go-to, which everybody always laughs at me at, is dun dun dun.
Yes. In the 7s, or was it in the 6s?
It was on the floor because it was in like sports.
That's right. Our little sports pile.
It was in the sports pile. That to me, but that was me also, being a Montrealer. I felt it was very important to promote Montreal.
Yeah,
Toronto
and you could read it
bookstore.
actually. You could read the French version to somebody.
Yes, this is my French version. Yeah, to me, every time somebody I knew was pregnant, I bought this book and sent it to him because I thought, this is mandatory reading for any Canadian. Yeah, very important stuff.
Absolutely, it is. It has to be on your list. Okay.
So what for you is something, I think you probably mentioned this already, but what is something for you that you read all of? You couldn't get enough?
Oh, definitely the Shane Peacocks. Anything that was historical fiction. I don't really recall series, but what was it wasn't Canadian though. It was the, the kids they're brilliant. This is what we did in the store all the time. They're brilliant. They have a special gift and they're hired by the society it was in the 11th.
The Benedict Society?
Yes, the Benedict Society. I love that whole series.
Has a longer title, but yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
What about you?
Okay. Sorry?
What about you?
Me, I really like beautiful picture books. And so I think, Keo McClare, I'm going to pull out, and Julie Morstard. I have this thing for picture book biographies.
Wow,
and this is just gorgeous. It's gorgeous to look at. It's brilliant to read. I've read a lot of her stuff. This one in particular is beautiful. One of the ones that I thought was hysterical by her is the lists, which I never thought got enough attention. But I found it so funny, and the illustrations by
just gorgeous.
Julia Sarda, they're funny and beautiful at the same time. It's very kind of dark.
It's kind of like an Edward Gorey almost, a little gory.
Yeah, this is the back.
I love that. Beautiful.
It's just gorgeous. So I've had a lot of love for Keo McClare, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I think one other book that I felt was really important, not necessarily a book, it's very similar to what you were saying about Missing to Mama, because it's also Melanie Florence. Illustrated by Gabrielle Grimald. I love this one because it is so, it's so simple, but so important. And obviously it's simple because it's for a younger age than Missing to Mama. Right. But I found this one, for me, actually, I found this one more powerful. I don't know why, maybe because of the simplicity and the very key message that it brings out. And then the intergenerational aspect of it, which I quite admire.
There were a few very important books in that section, like I Am Not a Number, the Ojibwe
Yes.
by Jenny K. Dupuy and Kathy Kaser. Also a very important book, but again, you couldn't really recommend it to everybody. But that said, I was so keen to recommend it. Just a quick story. I recall having a Muslim child in my ESL volunteer class. I was volunteering at the library, and she was fascinated by the story. And she said the nun's head covering in the book were very much like her own hijab. And she wanted to know why the child was taken from her home. So that was so moving and such a delicate conversation for me to have with that child, and such a necessary book. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we can go on and on
We
and
should
on
probably wind up, okay?
and talk about our favorite books. I mean,
I know.
that was the wonder about working at Mabel's Fables, right? Or even just as a shopper wandering into Mabel's Fables. Depending on who you spoke to, they had a different favorite, and they would bring you to that favorite. And there was always, and the thing about Mabel's Fables, which I don't know if people know, is that because it's so small, it's very well curated. Eleanor could not bring in every single book that was released. It would be impossible. And so what she picked, in those meetings in the basement in the office, when the booksellers came in, or the reps came in, was very, very
specific.
Very specific, very focused on what she thought was not just the big sellers. Of course, we had the big sellers, but also what was important and what should go into kids' hands.
Right. And what her customers would buy, and what the teachers wanted, because, we had a big teacher list.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think, it all comes down to, like you said, it was our university. It was just an amazing way to learn and to be the first and second.
Yes, that's right.
Has been a third. Anna is the third. To have been published from Mabel's is such a big deal. And I remember having my book launch at Mabel's, and Eleanor spoke, and Peter Carver, my editor, spoke, and Kevin Sylvester spoke, and you gave me flowers.
It was great.
It was so wonderful.
So moving.
I couldn't have imagined doing it anywhere else either. I couldn't. And having a whole whack of salespeople there. Our friends / salespeople there to cheer me on. I mean, it was amazing.
We were very lucky. We were very lucky to have found that place. And I mean, any indie store as well is going to hand sell like that, and get the right books into the right hands. But we were very lucky to have Mabel's.
Yes.
Yeah. So great. This is a great talk, and join us next week for our
again.
Okay, that was fun, Heather.
Thank you so much, Loretta.
Thank you. And I'll see you maybe at the bookstore. Bye.
Bye.